I didn't mention in the prayers that Ernest Larkins is not with us this morning because his mother had surgery this week, and he's been spending a lot of time with her, and so needed to be with her this morning. She's doing very well, but we'll offer our prayers for Ernest and his mom as well. I'm getting to the place in my life where I can remember that I've learned certain things, but I can't remember exactly how or where I learned them. I wish I could tell you precisely where I picked up this insight, and I remember kind of feeling it, experiencing it in one particular moment out of one particular experience, but I can't remember the details. Sorry. But this is what I learned. I learned that if there's an injustice, that sometimes the making of justice is not direct. Sometimes it's indirect. So if something has gone wrong, if someone has been wronged, that sometimes it is impossible to make it right in those specific circumstances. But there are many ways to create justice. Now, this is a powerful idea, in my opinion, because it gives us a lot of choices. It gives us a lot of possibilities. So when something does go wrong, even when we feel powerless, we are not, in fact, powerless, because we have so many avenues to justice, to making things right, to healing the wounds that have been created. This has been kind of a helpful thing to remember during this time when the country is reacting still, although you can already start to feel the attention dwindle around the Zimmerman verdict and what happened to Trayvon Martin. But these facts, these realities are not going away. They are with us. So I do not expect the justice system to fix this problem. I have to say, even though I try to live my life out of a context and a framework of hope, that I am cynical about our justice system. I am cynical. No offense to the lawyers in the room. And I'm cynical because I keep seeing the situations where I realize that when we use this word justice in that system, that it means a very specific thing. It's not that the meaning is wrong, it's just different. That the way the system works is not necessarily about justice in the way that we might understand justice in a church setting, in a faith setting. It's just different. But I sort of expect that the people with the most power will prevail in our justice system. The people who have more money, who have access to proper representation are going to do better. You get a new little app on your iPhone and they give you one of those little disclosure things that even on the iPhone is like 10 pages long. I do not think that that is there to protect me. And when I sign insurance papers or medical stuff and I have to fill out all those forms, I do not think that that is there for my protection. I'm sorry. I'm just a little bit cynical about this. This doesn't mean that our system doesn't work, that there is great good that comes out of it. But it is not perfect in any way. And so when we come up against these situations where an injustice happens in our justice system, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. But I feel like as people of faith, we are called to a different understanding of justice. Just in the same way that we're called to a different attitude toward truth. You know, there are a lot of things that you can say that are true, but they're not really true. There are things that you can say that, there are lots of ways that I can justify myself to myself. But they are not necessarily true. And I feel like as a person of faith, I am somehow called to that deeper conversation with the truth, even as imperfectly as I do it. I am called to that deeper conversation about justice, even when it is a challenge. And so in this situation where this young man has been shot, and people are looking for justice, they're looking for acknowledgement of the importance of this young man's life. They're looking for some sort of consequence. They're pointing to the challenges, the injustices in the system. They're expecting and hoping for this verdict to answer that. And of course, it fails. But that does not stop us from creating and seeking justice. So every time we speak out about this, every time we acknowledge the deep pain, that is not just the pain of one family. This is the pain of the whole body. This is the pain of the whole body. Which young man, no matter the color of his skin, is not our brother, or our nephew, or our grandson? Which of these children are we willing to say are any less important than the ones that are sitting right next to us? They are all important. Their lives are important. Their lives are sacred, and this must be spoken. This must be acknowledged. These are the sons and daughters of our congregation. These are the sons and daughters of our communities. These are the sons and daughters of our nation. These are the sons and daughters of our world. And attention must be paid. Attention must be paid. It's been so interesting to have chosen a couple of months ago to study this book, The New Jim Crow, by Michelle Alexander. We've just finished doing 3 weeks of looking at this book, and the diversity ministry team had started to read it, and we decided, this is something that needs to be shared more widely. And perhaps that is an act of justice, to lift up this particular point of view that I feel like is gaining some traction in the world. This is her thought. That actually the justice system, the criminal justice system, and the war on drugs is actually now a whole set of systems, a whole set of structures that have a primary effect on young people of color and communities of color. And of course, when that happens, we're all affected. When that happens, this is us. This is us. And she lays it out unapologetically. And she marches through the steps. So if you just think about the war on drugs in general, that this was coming out of the law and order movement. The law and order movement came as a response, in many ways, to the civil rights campaign. That the law and order response had something to do with the challenges that people were seeing, the discomfort they were experiencing, with even the nonviolent techniques of Martin Luther King. That this came out as a response to racial issues. And she talks about how in communities of color, people are in drug sweeps, that lots of people are swept into that system. They're not represented well, so they often make plea bargains. They don't get lawyers. And so they're saddled with convictions of one sort or another, oftentimes felonies because of mandatory drug sentences. Judges don't have the discretion to make choices about what's appropriate in terms of how long someone should serve. There are just step after step after step, and that all mounts up. So people are spending a lot of prison time. When they come out, they are still branded as felons. And do you know that in many states felons can't vote? People often come out of prison in debt, and so they're scrambling to make ends meet for themselves, let alone for their families. That if you fill out an application for housing or for a job, that you have to check the box. We call it checking the box. Can you imagine if you were going in to find a job, you were desperate for a job, and you get to this place, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And you have to decide whether you're going to check the box. You don't have any access to many of the federal programs that are available to people without means. And so someone has been punished for their crime, and yet they continue to be punished. And of course that affects not just them, but it affects everyone in their system, in their family systems. So just do the math, that when one person is affected, how many other people are being affected by that? Now, I would maintain that as a progressive Christian, coming from a kind of theology that puts an emphasis on love rather than judgment, that the direction that we've gone currently with law and order, with the war on drugs, with mass incarceration, perhaps that's not working so well. And perhaps it's not even in line with what we believe about transformation, about our community responsibility to help our brothers and sisters. Now, I know this is a challenge. It's such a big problem. And of course we're against drugs. I would guess that there are people in this congregation who have seen the challenges of that. But what if we were to treat that as a public health problem rather than a criminal problem, which is what it really is? And of course, we're concerned about gun violence, as we should be. But we have to realize that if you look at drug use, that it's fairly equal between people of various races. But if you look at the conviction rates and the arrest rates, they're completely disproportionate. Completely. There is a system in place that has an inordinate effect on communities of color. That's just the truth. Some sort of deeper truth that somehow we have to at least acknowledge, at least let in. It's interesting, I read through Alexander's book, kind of waiting and hoping at the end that she would have the suggestion or the solution. What are we to do? But she doesn't really. But what she does is she calls us back to holding a picture, the bigger picture about injustice, about racism, to see how all these pieces fit together. You know, a lot of change happens incrementally. We take one piece at a time, and she says, be careful about that, because it's so easy to get headed down toward that road of looking at one piece or another and ignoring this bigger question. I feel like I've been challenged myself about that, and I have to confess that I can just feel, it feels like a ping pong match in my head about what I believe from my experience, what I've seen, and what she's saying, and where do I want to land? And I feel like what I'm being called to at this particular moment is to keep my mind open. I think I'm ready to find the answer, find the thing, so it can, it's like question, get it, organize, boom. And I think with this thing, with this experience, what I'm supposed to do is to not try to figure it all out, but to let my mind be open. What does God say about this? What do the scriptures say to us about creating justice, about decrying laws that are unfair, about the abuse of power? What are we taught? We have this amazing ability, and even an amazing desire, in my opinion, to create justice. We seek fairness. We seek equality. All of this comes from compassion our care and concern for others. This is what we've been taught in our tradition, to care for others. And out of that caring comes the desire for good for all people. If this means having to break open our ideas, our thoughts, our beliefs about the way things work, then I'm sorry. That's the way it is. And we can do this with prayer. We can do this with a sense that it is not the work of me alone. It is not just the work of the community. It is not just the work of the nation. But it's a thing so big that can only be held by God. And God has this really kind of amazing way to let the truth be known to us, to let the way be shown. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about that step-by-step thing. Can't quite see where we're going, but we're going to keep stepping toward that light, toward that truth, toward those possibilities. And in that process, the whole body can be healed. The whole body that includes each and every one of us can be healed, can be whole, can be one. Amen.